So, is this your first visit to our planet?
I am from the same planet as you. I'm from California. Why, we're practically neighbors.
Welcome in, Kuma Crew. I am, as always, Annakuma, and today I'm actually back with a full retrospective on Broken Sword 2, like I promised over a year ago. Yeah, it took a while, but we're back, and I do want 2026 to be focused on getting this series done, and starting other retrospective series, and even getting some shorter retrospectives out as well, which I am kind of doing with this new channel. Harvester is out, Tomba should be out, so yeah, we're doing it. But we'll see how the year goes. Long-form content is my favorite content to watch on YouTube myself, and after proving I could do things, just things in 2025, maybe not good things, but things nonetheless, I want 2026 to be about making things I want to make. So, content that I would watch myself is where we're at, which is longer form content. If you are just finding this channel, then please give it some love, as this is a new channel where I'm going to be putting my longer form essay style videos on. I also have my main channel that has smaller reviews. It used to have a lot of reviews, I did a lot last year, but I'm going to just cut back on that to focus on the retrospectives for 2026, because that's what I want to do. I'm going to try to get a lot of content out on it this year. It will mainly be old point-and-click games, but there will be other things, including, as I've already said, this pink-haired caveman, who should already be out. But here we are to talk about Broken Sword 2, The Smoking Mirror. After the success of the first game, Revolution Software a year later in 1997 released Broken Sword 2, The Smoking Mirror. Whilst George Stobbart and Nickel Collard returned, their sights were no longer on the Knights Templar, but instead on Mesoamerica as they unravel an ancient god's sinister plan to return to the Earth. Nothing much changes for this game. The beautiful art style returns, and the puzzles are as fun and engaging as its predecessor, but you can tell that the game itself ended up feeling smaller than the original. It also had half the budget of the first game, with Virgin Media slowly falling out of love with adventure games, even though Broken Sword 1 itself was a giant hit, both on PC and console. But for some context, Broken Sword: The Shadows of the Templar released at the beginning of October 1996. The game reportedly had a budget of roughly $1 million. At the back end of October though, in 1996, Virgin published another now cult classic point-and-click game called Toonstruck, which I'm always in the middle of trying to write some kind of script to talk about it in a video, as it is one of my favorite games. Hopefully that appears sometime in 2026, we can hope. That game reportedly had a budget of about $8 million, and was a massive failure for Virgin, for various different reasons. So, regardless of the success of Broken Sword, you can't really blame Virgin for not having the faith in the genre. Especially as consoles were bringing out now classic platformers and RPGs at the same time. Just to focus on the PlayStation alone, that console was already in full swing, and in 1996 it seemed the likes of Blood Omen, Crash Bandicoot, Resident Evil, and Tomb Raider all release. Oh, and a little known classic called Bubsy 3D, which I'm going to be playing, or might have already played, depending on how well I play Bubsy games in 2025, over on my Twitch channel, so go take a look at that. 1997 itself saw Crash Bandicoot 2, Oddworld Apes Odyssey, which is one of my all-time favorite games, Final Fantasy VII, which is the JRPG that broke into the West, Breath of Fire 3, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night release. So again, you can't really blame Virgin after the failure of such a huge project as Toonstruck and the rise of popularity worldwide of just about any game being put on the PlayStation for not trusting 2D point-and-click games to be able to hold their own. That being said, there are many reasons why the point-and-click genre slowly died at the end of the 90s. Heck, there are many reasons why Toonstruck itself failed, but I guess those discussions are for another day. Mainly because, like the first game, Broken Sword 2 didn't flop. It was a good game, and it found its audience. For the Broken Sword games, though, not much changed between the first game and the second game, with Charles Cecil still at the helm, and it's safe to say people were expecting much of the same, just a little different. Rolf Saxon always returns to voice George. In fact, he is just George at this point. The same sadly cannot be said for Nico, who has been voiced by a different actress in every single game so far. Hazel Ellaby giving way in the second game to Jennifer Karen Hall. They were by far not the only two returning characters in the game, with many fan favourites from the first returning or at least getting a mention. Some of the loose ends of the first game do get tied up, but we'll talk about them throughout the gameplay section anyway. Now again, before we start talking about the game itself, I should point out, seeing this is kind of the first big video on this channel, just what we're going to do in these retrospectives. Yes, there will be spoilers. I won't go into too much detail on most of the puzzles, but I will be talking about the story in depth and the characters quite a bit. I'm also only talking about the original game as it came out in 1997. Broken Sword 2 Reforged has just been announced, but there's no release date on that one, so I haven't been able to play it before this. It'll probably be much the same as Reforged 1, which was the same game with a few little extra touches to it. But there's also a good reason why I'm not talking about the remaster. This will surprise most of you because I always hide my hyperfixations really well and do not mention them all the time. But with all the bad stuff happening in 2025, I became very hyperfixated on the YouTube creator Just Drive Hayes. Among others, I do also watch a lot of Slope's Game Room because I enjoy his essay-style content as well, and I watch the Grand Line reviews. And I will say, Liam, Mr. Internet Man, you have spoiled so much of One Piece this year for me. I hate you, but I also love you. Your content is amazing. I just need to read the chapters faster. But watching Josh's videos is one of the reasons that got my ass in gear to do this video after wasting a year not doing the video. And one of the reasons is because I watched his VOD of him playing Broken Sword 1 and Broken Sword 2, and when he made this comment...
So the Club Alamu is not in Paris. Oh, the airport. I guess we're off to Ireland. Europe, oh beautiful, we can travel all around, mad MS Paint skills. Let's go to Ireland, Lochmarn.
I wanted to make a point in this review that the originals are just so much more nicer to look at. Sure, this was a comment based on Broken Sword 1, because sadly Broken Sword 2 doesn't have a map. It is a much more linear experience, which we'll get to later, but Broken Sword 1's map was a beautiful roadmap of Paris that pretty much was the exact roadmap of the city itself. And I just wanted to point this out because I'm being pedantic, and I watched Josh, and Josh is pedantic, so it's worth being pedantic, just to prove that I do watch a lot of his videos. But yeah, other than being slightly uglier than the original, I don't even think there is much difference gameplay-wise in the two versions of the second game, so just play the original because it's prettier. Also, this isn't really a judgment on what game you play. Whilst Nico's puzzles in the first game add nothing, they are fun, and if that is the copy you have, then that's the copy you play. I mainly just wanted to find one way to add in my hyperfixation on Josh into a video, or it is possibly going to be the only person that sits through long enough to hear it, and it will make him giggle. He did come and visit me in 2025. He was the first person I saw in 4 years of being agoraphobic, and I forced him to sit down and watch Josh videos for 4 hours to keep me from having a panic attack. I am a well-stable bear over here, trust me. That being said, Broken Sword, or at least the first Broken Sword game, is a game where you can have a very different experience of the game if you play the director's cut over the original, or Reforged. But again, I'm mainly just mentioning it for Josh, and for being pedantic, and because it's funny. Yeah. So, Broken Sword 2, The Smoking Mirror, what's it about? It instantly starts off looking like it isn't going to be as majestic or big as the first game, and a cutscene that feels like it started in the middle of itself. We see George and Nico approaching a house intermingled with something happening in a pyramid elsewhere in the world. George tells us that he's been away from Paris for 6 months. We don't really get any reasoning behind why he showed up back right now, and instead of waiting to meet up with Nico when she isn't busy, he's going along to a meeting with an archaeologist with her. He doesn't know why they're going, but here we are.
To do with a Mayan stone she came across while researching the story.
They are met at the door by this guy, who takes them into a room, then hits George over the head and ties him up as Nico is shot with a dart from this guy behind a curtain. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, we're having a human sacrifice, because why not? The big guy leaves a giant spider and a fire for George to deal with and runs off, or I guess walks off, he doesn't really need to run, with Nico over his shoulder and the game begins. Now I personally would always be more scared of this spider, it's massive, I don't like it. That being said, don't think it deserves what it got.
Maybe I've been a little heavy-handed.
There's nothing wrong with the intro, but you can already feel that the game just isn't going to be as big or as grand as the first. Shadow of the Tempest had this wide sweeping view of Paris as the first shot, the amazing music playing over the top of it just before going into the mystery of the killer clown. The smoke and mirror just gets to the point, and that's fine. The thing is, it isn't personal either. Whilst these two events we're meant to know are connected, and we're meant to know they're connected by the fact they're happening at the same time, it doesn't feel as personal as George himself accidentally being blown up in the clown's explosion. So, again, it's fine, it's not a criticism, it's a difference, but it is a giant difference when you go from the first game to the second game, seeing how not personal it is. Suddenly, we're in the game with George backing away from the spider. There isn't much you can do here, so it isn't hard to figure out what it is you have to do. With one spider dead by a bookcase, George can finally begin to work out how he's going to leave this room, which, again, is on fire. Or at least this one patch in front of the door is on fire, it doesn't really spread far, and to be fair, George could have probably jumped over it. If he was more Tomb Raider-ish, he probably would have. Lara Croft would be out this room in seconds. George has to go and do point-and-click things, though. That being said, that is because this acts as a catch-up on how the game plays, or like a soft tutorial, and it plays pretty much the same way as the first game does. You'll move your cursor over items, and it will change depending on what you can do with any given item. There are a few cupboards and drawers you can open and rummage through, a few things to look at in the room, and the main difference between this and the first game is that the inventory is at the bottom of the screen instead of the top of the screen. The top of the screen is now this pop-down menu instead, where you can save the game and so on, and it looks ugly compared to the UI of the first game. But that's just a nitpicky thing. I don't like this, I think it looks ugly. We have to deal with it, it's just there. But again, I will probably always point out that much of this game just feels very small compared to the original, and the menu being this kind of ugly drop-down thing instead of its own UI kind of proves that again. The budget probably just wasn't there, or they didn't have the time to make something like the first game, but it does show when you're looking into the game a little deeper. Or maybe they just didn't want one, or they didn't have time. Either way, I'm nitpicking, as I said. Now, after rummaging through things, you'll find enough to put out the fire, but you'll also find these panties.
It was a stylish little canvas number containing a lipstick, a handwritten note, and a pair of nylon panties with a large love heart emblazoned across the front. It occurred to me that Nico's tastes must have really changed while I was away.
Now, I loved some of the items that just kept with you throughout the first game. Things like the nose from the clown and the greasy tissue that you find in the first, 10 minutes of the game. In this game, you get these panties, as well as some dog biscuits a little later on, and whilst it is funny, this is another classic George moment. You see, we find out a little later that George had to go home at short notice due to his father being ill and passing away. That being said, in 6 months, he never once contacted Nico, therefore Andre, the character we are meant to believe was a creep in the first game but never really did anything creepy, can be ham-fisted into the story as being a creep for the first time, and sending Nico some sexy underwear is the way they did that. This really doesn't play out into anything though. George just kind of shows everyone, including Andre and Nico, both of whom shrug it off well enough, and mainly people just question why he's holding onto some woman's panties the entire game. I'm not against them or the joke, but I've grown to be sad about the way Andre is treated in games, but I guess I can keep that until the man himself appears in a second. With George putting out this tiny fire, now comes the real challenge. Figuring out where to go next and unlocking the front door. It actually isn't that hard, but this specific playthrough that I recorded, bearing in mind I've played this game a lot since it released. I had it on release, I believe. I've played it my entire life. I forgot to get the key from the bureau, so was stood wondering why I couldn't open this door for 10 minutes. I also often forget, before you can phone Andre, and I told you he was coming up soon, you have to read the letter he sent Nico with the underwear to get his phone number in the first place. I mean, it makes sense. We know that Andre was the one that sent Nico to this place, and we wouldn't know his phone number off the top of our head, if at all. But sometimes I forget, because I'm forgetful. There are also a few other things you can read here, including an article on an eclipse that is happening soon. It's all small steps to build up to the main story that we'll get to as we go along. With the phone number now known, you can phone up Andre, who will send you to an old hangout of George's, that being Mount Fashon. Now, if you played the first game, which I hope you had, this is the area that had the drunken police officer and the juggler that you piss off. It is also where the stories of Sewer Jacques, which is just basically George after entering a few sewers, really got started. With all this done, you can leave the house and instantly get sent to Mount Fashon, where a familiar-looking guy is sitting doing a familiar-looking thing.
There was no sign of Labrador when I got to the cafe. I decided to order a coffee and wait for him.
Yeah, the drunk Gardemon is back, but he's now retired. But just enjoys sitting here being grumpy and having a drink anyway. This is something Broken Sword does really well. Whilst the games will fly to various places and see much of the world, we always come back to Paris at some point in the game, and when we come back, it opens the chances up of running into familiar faces. Nico doesn't move, she's always in the same place, so the same area of Paris is always where the two will convene in, and returning characters are used well and always a delight to see. We'll get to more returning characters later as they appear, slightly stranger returning characters, but probably my favourites. Another nice touch is just because Andre told you where to meet him, doesn't mean he's going to rush to meet you. This gives George time to talk to the Gardemon and order himself a drink before Andre shows up. Whilst this is obviously written to be the case, it still gives the game that feeling of being a film, a real adventure that George is on, and not just some convenient plot points tied together. Not much of what the Gardemon will tell you is important. He'll mainly fill in the story of what happened to him between games and give you some of the words of wisdom.
What it is to be young and in love. Will you share a bottle of wine with me?
Hey, listen, I'd love to, but I need to keep a clear head.
So my company isn't good enough for you.
You'll have to stop the waiter, who will give George the information he'll cling on to for the rest of the game, because if there is one thing that George loves, it is idle gossip that he'll believe 100% the moment he hears it.
Have you heard of Professor Oubier?
Oui. He married that actress, the little dachshund. They used to come here. The nutty professor and the movie star.
If Oubier's wife was a movie star, how come I never heard of her?
She was big in France. The world doesn't stop at Hollywood. Her stage name was Carol Climax. She died in suspicious circumstances.
How did Oubier's wife die?
I heard he shot her.
And got away with it?
He had a good lawyer and a watertight alibi.
Also, how amazing is the name Carol Climax? This woman isn't even in the game, but her legacy lives on, I feel, more than her husband's. With both the Gardemon and the way to talk to, Andre will finally show up and we'll get a little more information on what it is George is facing this time out. As I said, the game kind of just starts and the opening cutscene doesn't necessarily explain a single thing about what is happening or why Nico is going to this mansion or why indeed we're tagging along with her. Andre will tell us that Nico gave him a stone that she was trying to get confirmed was a main artifact by Oubier. What I really love is when Andre sits down, we have this close-up screen where it is obvious that the Gardemon is listening in. It's just another moment where it makes the world feel lived in, like the characters are real people and not just there to be in the game itself. It's also just funny because George and Andre are just sat in the open on the street and they don't really keep their voices down. This guy here doesn't have to get closer to listen. He probably could hear them fine just sitting like he was. He's right next to them anyway. Andre isn't happy to see us, and we're not too thrilled to see Andre. He is annoyed that our presence always puts Nico in danger, and George blames him for Nico being in danger, as he was the one that pointed her to Oubier in the first place. George and Andre's rivalry is a funny one, and I do feel, and I'll keep saying it, that to a point it does feel like they retroactively make Andre worse to make George the better option in the games. In the first game, Andre really didn't do anything. If anything, he was just being French. In this one, he does send Nico the pants, but then again, George goes around the world waving them in everyone's faces after the fact anyway. There is also this whole I'm braver than you thing going on with George all the time when it comes to Andre. It happens in the first game when they question why Andre refused to go to Scotland with them, and it happens a bit in this game. One thing that kind of goes against that in this game, though, is that Andre at first refuses point blank to give George the stone that Nico gave him to hold on to, as if something bad happened to George, it would be on his shoulders, which I think is brave, because at the end of the day, Andre never agreed to ever fall down these dangerous holes with George and Nico.
What do you suppose the carving on the stone means?
I don't know. I haven't shown it to anyone.
Why don't you just give it to me?
I don't want your death on my conscience, George.
Both times he was asked for his professional expertise, at first with his actual expertise in Templar history, and in this game to hook Nico up with someone that could help with Mesoamerican history. He never asked to be a hero, he's just a history nerd helping out on the sidelines, so every time George takes a dig at him, it's kind of silly. But him refusing to give George the stone, knowing that there is danger attached to it, is another one of those moments that prove, in my opinion, that the writers never really believed that Andre was a bad person, like they have George say he is. He's just also not the hero. And he's not meant to be the hero. He's also not meant to get the girl, but we know that because George is the main character. Not that they ever really write George as getting the girl either. That's a whole different point, though. That's a messy thing with him and Nico. We'll go into that one day, I'm sure.
I don't believe it. It's a picture of Anna Maria, dressed as a nun.
Cute nun.
Very cute.
So what's the deal?
This nun is Anna Maria.
No way.
Yes way, very way, in a big way.
Whoa! You've been dating a nun, George. A nun!
Well, she wasn't wearing all that gear when I met her.
In some countries, they execute you for that, George.
Well, maybe she's not a real nun. Maybe she's at a costume party.
Yeah, and those goons who attacked you in New York with the 7 dwarves.
Oh, and if you want to be reminded that George himself is a horrible little cretin, we get lines like this.
Perhaps she suspected something like this would happen.
If she's been hurt, Andre, I'll break every bone in your body.
No, that's typical of you. Do you think I don't care what happens to Nicole?
It occurred to me that slugs don't have bones to break, but I kept that thought to myself.
This all comes about because George doesn't like the fact that Andre sent Nico to Ubier, but Andre was just doing his job. In fact, in the first game, a lot of things we did because Andre told us to do it. It is his job as a history nerd. How was Andre to know that something bad was gonna happen? Ubier himself is a famous historian, archaeological guy, person. You know, he's famous. He dated a film star. George just outright threatens a man for doing his job, and then ironically asks Andre if he could give him a clue as to whom to ask about this little pot he has, and happily skips off to the recommended gallery after finishing this conversation.
Where can I find this guy?
He owns a gallery on the left bank, the Gliese Gallery.
George is just a horrible person, guys. Also, I want to point out, and this is just a silly thing, but I grew up watching F1, and when I hear the word Nico, I guess the name Nico, not the word Nico, even though Nico Rosberg only started in F1 10 years after the first Broken Sword game, which I played as a child, every time they talk about Nico nowadays, I just think of either Nico Rosberg or sometimes Nico Hulkenberg. I'm sorry, Nico, you will always just be a German racing driver to me now, apparently. You can have a bit of a conversation with Andre and see what he's been up to, but when he's finished, he'll leave, and we'll flash to Nico, who's being held captive in a scruffy-looking room and being interrogated by this guy here called Karzak.
I've had enough of your games, Kala. Tell me what you've done with my stone.
I thought your business was simply smuggling cocaine, Karzak. Why are you so interested in that stone?
Either you tell me what I want to know, or Pablo here will make you talk.
Nico just thought he was a cocaine smuggler, but he's interested in the stone she's got. You can lie to him about where you sent the stone, but he doesn't buy it. He threatens her and then gags her and leaves. It is nice to keep us up to date with what Nico is doing, and to give more context to what is happening, because again, even now, we don't necessarily actually know anything that Nico knows. We've jumped into the opening cutscene just accompanying her to Ubier's house, and we're slowly piecing things together, but we still don't really know what it is she was doing at the house. Again, in the first game, it starts off super personal. In this game, it also does start off super personal insofar as Nico herself has been kidnapped and George is in love with her, but we're learning a lot about the main focus of the game beyond that, with no real need to right now, because the main focus for George is just finding Nico. In the first game, he slowly opened the mystery of the killer, but his main purpose was just to find the killer in the first place. It was drip-fed to us over a long period of time in-game. In this game, our main purpose right now is to find Nico, but we're sat here having a lot of information randomly given to us about side characters in Mesoamerican history without actually knowing what it is indeed that we need to know or what relevance any of this has to Nico and why she's been kidnapped. That said, we're back to George, and we could talk to this guy again to make him cry. You can actually ask him a bunch of stuff, and if you persist, you'll find out he was fired because of us. Yes, us. It's because of George.
Excuse me.
What?
Didn't you try to appeal against your dismissal?
There was no point. It was my word against that of the chief inspector. And he was a close friend of the director of the museum I was supposed to be patrolling.
Excuse me.
Leave me alone.
Which museum was it you were supposed to be patrolling?
The croon. It wasn't as if anything important was stolen. Just a rusty old tripod.
The tripod had returned a few weeks later.
He was meant to be the guard watching out at the museum the night we stole the tripod, so that's a whoopsie on our behalf. When he is crying, though, you can steal his flask, which is full of absinthe, and with him thoroughly depressed, you have some very strong alcohol in your possession and you can leave. Now, as I've said before in this retrospect, this is where a giant difference between the two games lies. Broken Sword 1, as I've already said, had this wonderful map that you would navigate. It was a perfect replica of a Paris road map, with such good detail that the tourist traps were in the right places as well. You then get to fly off to various different locations on another map. Only Paris had a map, but it was a beautiful one. The Smoking Mirror doesn't have any map. The Smoking Mirror also doesn't really need any map. If you have multiple places to go like now, you just click off the edge of a screen and the options to where you can go show up at the bottom of the screen. That being said, Broken Sword 2 is actually extremely linear, as I've said, compared to the first game. It isn't a grand adventure in the same sense, so you rarely even get these moments, and I guess one of the reasons you get this option here is purely so if you have missed anything you need at Ubier's mansion, you can return to his house and get it. It is something I feel makes the game seem very small compared to the first game, but with a shrinking budget and a smaller time to create a story, it was an understandable change to the game. And as I said, because it's so linear, you don't need it. It isn't like you can branch off into different directions like you could in the first game. You get sent from point A to point B to point C pretty much instantly. You don't need to worry about maps. It's a shame, but again, it's much like the smaller areas in the first game anyway, which didn't have maps. With all that whined about, as I said, we're off, and we're off to Glee's Gallery, and just look at it. I love that we have a few people that walk past the gallery on the outside. Again, I love when games feel like real places with real people living in them. I know sometimes it's just a matter of clutter on screen or animating budgets or whatever, but giant cities that have like 2 people ever seen in them make me sad. Broken Sword never stops having their games feel like the real places they are meant to be, full of people going about their day-to-day lives. Like, look at this guy that just comes and shoves his face up against the glass. Sure, he does it all the time because there's like 2 or 3 different people on the outside and they have a small loop of appearing, but I love him.
Too minimalistic for too much money.
These tourist girls show up a few times in the game and are just there as stereotypical Japanese tourists, I guess. They don't understand English, so they just giggle at George. Again, they make the world feel lived in, and it is funny when you see them later in the game as well, so I'm not too worried about that. I don't know why I'd be worried about that. I improvised a word and it didn't even make sense. Then you have this fat pompous guy, and he's a critic, because of course he is. So you'll hate him because he's a bit of a dick, as critics are. He also smashes your pot, because why wouldn't he smash your pot?
Would you give me your opinion on this pot, sir?
Yes, very rapouche.
Rapouche?
Hideous.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
The only other person in here would be the owner, who won't give you much to go on, but he'll drop little bits of lore whilst also being very realistic in that he won't just blur out every little detail about someone he works with.
Could you tell me which docks Professor Oubier uses to import the artifacts?
Good God, no. I can't possibly reveal my commercial secrets.
That is always one thing I'm very grateful for Broken Sword doing. It never makes George so charming that any old person will just tell you their life story. No, they will ask why you are being nosy and why this information is at all relevant to you. He also has this very Monkey Island-esque line and I love it.
Have you seen any of Oubier's wife's films?
Only one. Believe me, I was appalled, shocked, disgusted, and repulsed.
Well, you sure got your money's worth.
It also means you have to figure out a puzzle to get what you want. So this annoying guy is drinking. We just so happen to have a flask of absinthe, and if you are very vigilant with trying to find hitboxes, you'll notice this glass has a hitbox. What you do is you just spike his drink, and he likes it.
I splashed a little absinthe into the glass and hoped he wouldn't notice the change of color.
Did you put something in my drink?
Yeah, I did. Well, what do you think?
Well, it's certainly an improvement over Gleese's wine. In fact, I could grow to like it.
Doing it a second time will have him topple over into a display, probably seriously hurting himself in hindsight, as he does smash through all these pots and glass, but mainly just upsetting the gallery owner, who now also has his own set of ugly broken things. Whilst they are being dramatic over to the side, but not phoning an ambulance for this guy, you sneak into the very not sneaky area that I'm sure the owner could still see us in, and figure out that Nico was taken to the docks.
Underneath the logo of a flying bird were the words Condor Transglobal Mars. The rest of the label was missing. It was beginning to make sense. Oubier had organized Nico's abduction. Oubier withdrew money from Marseille. Oubier was connected with Transglobal, who shipped their goods from a warehouse in Marseille. That's how the torn Transglobal label had once read. Marseille, not Mars. It wasn't much of a lead, but it was all I had. I set off immediately to catch the evening train.
I do love that George continues to think the worst of people, regardless of whether they deserve it or not as well. Bearing in mind, he hasn't met Oubier yet, and only heard one rumor that he potentially killed his wife. George is absolutely 100% certain that Oubier kidnapped Nico on purpose, and is some kind of mastermind behind what? I don't know what he believes, but he's behind it, guys, he really is. Of course, George is rarely right when he says things like this, but, you know, we get used to it. With the location of where we believe Nico will be, we can leave, and again, with the game being much more linear than the original, we just go straight to the docks instead of getting a map or even an option of where to go.
It was almost dawn when I arrived in Marseille. I traced Condor Transglobal to a desolate dockside.
At the docks, we come face to face with a game, and a doggo, and a very angry man in a box.
What's the big idea?
I don't know. The dog went berserk for no apparent reason.
He's trained to do that. The idea is to deter any would-be intruder.
Oh, I get it. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just remember, he's a trained attack dog. A killer.
I love this puzzle. To get into the docks, we need to get rid of this guard, or the guard dog. It's late and the guard won't let us in because why would he? It's late and they're shot. We don't work here. Why would we be allowed in? George thinking just showing up is going to get him through his typical George. There aren't many screens to this puzzle. There's never many screens in this game full stop for any kind of puzzle, so it becomes very obvious what you'll be looking at very soon. This dog won't let you near the fence. The guard himself doesn't seem to be bothered about guarding, but will be brought out of his box when the dog barks. You can go below his guard room and find a trapdoor into the room, as well as a hook that can put down the platform leading into the room itself. After smoking the guard out and getting some dog biscuits, you can set the dog up for a bath.
Hey, 20. Come and get it, boy.
I felt a slight twinge of conscience as I prepared to give the dog a dunking. It soon passed. As I'd expected, the dog could swim like a... well, like a dog.
Don't worry, guys. The dog just loves swimming. He's fine. Whilst the inside of the guard room doesn't give you much, the coal that you pick up, as well as the dog biscuits, do stick around for most of the game. Much like the hand buzzer and the greasy tissue in the first game, these are items along with the panties that you can ask pretty much everyone about. You'll get unique dialogue asking why the heck George is even showing people these items, as well as an update on how much George apparently wants to eat the dog biscuits. They do get used later, but again, much like the first game, it's just fun to have random items that actually end up being running gags throughout the game until they are either used or just thrown away. With the dog dunked, you can finally get over the fence and the guard just doesn't do anything. Then you'll find your way to the warehouse at the end of the dock that you're looking for. Now, the puzzle is how to get in. You can't just knock and hope they'll give you nickel, of course. Again, this is another multi-step puzzle that is very fun to work out. It also leads to a death. Yes, Broken Sword, the Smoking Mirror, also has various death scenes. For example, here you need to shut the fan up in the warehouse so that Pablo can hear you knock on the door.
That did the trick. The fan clunked and shorted out as its blades were mashed by the boat hook.
When you knock on the door, you can annoy him enough that he'll come out. You'll hear him unlocking the door and probably at first wait to see what happens. Thing is, if he catches you out here, you die.
Pizza delivery? I did. No, I don't.
Maybe he was allergic.
If you know what if I...
I'll kick your head in.
Okay. I'll...
So what do? Well, to stop the fan from making a noise, you had to climb up this ladder. So again, you're just climbing up this ladder here to the top of the warehouses. Here there is a barrel thrower that you can use to have Pablo move to check what made the sound after you've dunked a barrel into the water. And when he's in the way of the barrel thrower, because of course he's just going to stand in front of it, you can throw another barrel down there and knock him into the water. It's a good use of the situation you're in, and it's a good use of the scenery around you, and I like this puzzle. There's a lot of puzzles kind of like this in Broken Sword 2 as well. It's very well done. After Pablo gets dunked, we can go inside and we can rummage around a little until we find a key. We move towards the elevator just to be stopped by this little guy.
Whoa! Don't shoot!
This is the guy that blow-darted Nico from behind the curtains as Pablo knocked us out. He's been locked up, so we give him the key and he scurries away.
Hey, you're manacled. Who did this? That big thug? I'm gonna set you free, okay? little guy had gone to ground amongst the stack of crates.
This might actually be a smart move because George himself is not a nice person and would probably not listen to whatever he had to say about the situation before being insufferable to him. Even more insufferable, I guess, as he was being pretty insufferable to begin with. Can you die from insufferable Georgeness? Probably. I haven't quite yet, but there's still another new Broken Sword game on the horizon, so maybe he'll get me done in Broken Sword 6. Get me done? That doesn't sound the way I wanted it to. Shut up. So up the elevator we go, and we're in a random room. Still no Nico. First though, George decides he has to do something about the elevator doors themselves, which is smart thinking for George. We've only just dunked a guy and had another guy scurry away, and we don't know if either or other people will be returning to the warehouse at any point, so stopping them from being able to get to the top floor is a smart move. With the door secured, we're able to turn on the lights and see that one of the walls has scratch marks in front of them. After a quick investigation, George will open the secret wall, and finally we're reunited with Nico.
Just as I'd hoped. A secret room. Nico!
This time, George doesn't go for the unwanted kiss and just unties and takes the tape off her mouth. She very obviously doesn't really want to be in the room anymore, so she tells you as much as she needs to tell you, then leaves. You can then talk to her in much more detail in the main room whilst trying to figure out a way to safely get out of the room. She'll tell you about how she was trying to get a report on Karzak for drug smuggling, found the stone, and realized he was up to something different. Nico was still certain that Condor and Karzak are drug smugglers, which to be fair, they might be, they probably are also drug smugglers, but doesn't seem to know why the heck he wants the random Mayan stone. She says this about him.
Tell me about this Karzak guy.
Well, I saw him for only a few minutes, but he frightens me. I got the impression that Pablo was nervous when he was around too. His eyes, they're like a wild animal's, like a tiger. That's what scared me most about him. He looked so unpredictable and dangerous.
So we know he's a very bad dude, guys. She'll also not be at all moved hearing Ubier might have killed his wife. She then drops the giant bombshell that this beautiful mustached man...
Freeze! Hold it, right there.
Whoa, don't shoot. I'm innocent. I'm an American.
Can't make up your mind, huh?
I demand to see the American consul.
Drop your weapons and get down on the ground.
is still alive.
Did I hear you refer to Inspector Moon?
Yes, you remember him?
Of course I do. But I thought he was dead.
Oh no, he reappeared after the Broken Sword case had blown over. When he found out who was in with the Neo-Templars, he went into hiding. Moon knew more than was good for him.
Does he know about our involvement with the case?
If he does, he's not telling. Still, he got a sudden promotion.
The game writes him back into the series by saying he was smart enough to realize that Russo was a Templar, so faked his death. I'm just happy to see the best character from the first game survived, even if we don't get to see him. We also learn that Titipoco is the name of the small dude with Pablo, and that Nico doesn't really think he knows what the hell is going on, which makes sense seeing he was shackled downstairs and then ran away. Nico also doesn't really react too much to him showing her the dart that knocked her out, or the panties he took from her handbag. While she seems kinda about Andre even giving her the panties in the first place, there is no, why did you rummage in my bag and take things from it? No, please stop showing that to people. She just kinda shrugs it off that he has them in the first place.
I found these in your bag.
Oh, they were a gift.
I know, I read the note.
God knows what was going through Andre's mind.
I think that's quite plain enough.
I'm happy they wrote it that she kind of had secondhand embarrassment for Andre and wasn't herself embarrassed. But I would have kind of liked it to be like, George, why do you have these as well? I don't know. I feel like even just after being rescued by George, I wouldn't give him the benefit of the doubt of rummaging in my personal belongings and then confronting me with panties, you know? Like, I just feel like something should have happened there. With all the knowledge that you can get from Nico out of the way, lift the statue up, tie it up, and then ask her to push it through the upstairs door with us to make our getaway. This is one nice thing about this game. We're very often in the same place as Nico, so if you talk to her, she can help us with certain puzzles. I do like that. One cool action scene later, and we're in the water with the dog. look at how cute the doggo is. What a good pupper. For some reason, we just all end up back at the Glees Gallery after this scene, though, with Andre. I don't know why we're all here, but we are. He doesn't seem happy about giving the stone to George, but after Nico asks, he just does it. We have this entire conversation in front of Glees, for whatever reason, who tells us Quaramonte is where Ubier ships his stuff from. I don't know why we were in the Glees Gallery. I don't know why we were having this conversation in front of Glees, who we don't really know, who's not part of anything. And I'm not sure why Glees just suddenly decides to tell us that's where Ubier might be. But we now know that, and we go off to Quaramonte. That's where we're going, Quaramonte. Like Glees, my dude, you did so well to be a normal person. Why, when 3 random strangers stand in front of you, do you decide to tell them where your business partner is shipping his stuff from? Why? Either way, George and Nico end up in Quaramonte, which is a lovely little village that is home to this little market town, this Nepo baby playing that he's in charge of the village, these musicians whose friend has been locked up for handing out anti-establishment propaganda and also singing local Quaramonte songs, which is illegal, this drilling company that has a strong independent woman in charge, and she refuses to talk to George, and she's garbossing her little heart out, and then the 3 best characters. First up, I'll talk about this goat, because you can talk to this goat. In fact, you can give him the coal you've been carrying and have a conversation with him.
Now, I like most animals, but experience had made me wary of goats, and cats, and dogs. What was that? It's a lump of lucky coal. Coal? I would have preferred chocolate. Any flavor, so long as it hasn't got marzipan in it. God, I hate marzipan. You can talk. I mean, you're a talking goat. Keep your voice down. This is between you and me, right? Well, I guess so. Now, I mean it. You tell anyone you've spoken to me, and you'll be cursed.
Funnily enough, the goat is voiced by Rolf Saxon himself, so you can imagine that George is just trying to get through some Irish trauma all on his lonesome talking to this goat. But, that being said, as funny as the Easter egg with the goat is, the best 2 characters return.
George Stobbart, well, of longer.
Mrs. Henderson. Boy, this is some coincidence, huh?
When you've been married to a fruitcake like Dwayne as long as I have, you stop believing in coincidence.
I'd met Pearl and Dwayne on the other side of the globe in Syria. He was an army veteran who suspected he was working for the CIA, but wasn't sure. She was less obviously deranged.
Because it is the return of Dwayne and Pearl. Yes, for no real reason other than they are awesome, the 2 American tourists we randomly ran into in a small village in Syria, and now here in a random small village called Quaramonte. Dwayne now might actually be an undercover agent of some sort, whilst Pearl still just wants to buy pretty things and visit tourist spots. For a game series that travels far and wide, it makes the world feel small and a homely feeling, having people like Pearl and Dwayne just show up, and they are just as fabulous as they were before.
Call me old-fashioned, but I say packing trunks is woman's work. I left the packing to Pearl, and I can't find a darn thing.
Maybe it's biased because I really like these characters, but it never feels out of place having them. It's funny finding out why they're very often in the places we're in, but seeing them in multiple games just always makes me smile. The ongoing story of who Dwayne really is, Pearl just not caring one way or the other if she can get a bargain on some local goods, and both of them adopting George as their son away from home is just wonderful. This time, George barely says anything mean about Pearl either. Barely.
What does this mean to you, Pearl?
What cute little feathers. Why, if you had 2 of those, they'd sure make nice earrings.
This isn't intended for frivolous personal adornment, Pearl. It's a dart, tipped with a fast-acting, muscle-numbing poison.
Pardon me, I stand corrected, honey.
Sometimes I got the feeling that communication with Pearl was like sending signals out into space. Maybe, if you waited long enough, you'd get an intelligent answer back. But it was a long shot.
Both will be useful in a little bit, but you can talk to just about everyone in the town as well. This guy will tell you about Tezcatlipoca, the guy whose statue was left at the feet of Nico when she was kidnapped. He isn't very happy to see the statue, saying basically that nothing good will come of carrying the image of Tezcatlipoca around, and this is where I had to point something out. Broken Sword, the Smoking Mirror, kind of blends Mayan and Aztec ideology together. You see, for the majority of this game, we'll be told that everything we're doing is based on Mayan rituals, but Tezcatlipoca and much of the story they are telling are very much Aztec stories. Now, they obviously probably just went with one of the two Mesoamerican cultures and blended what they needed to into the story itself. There is some belief that Tezcatlipoca might be based or indeed the same deity as the Mayan or Olmec jaguar deities, but that isn't of any real significance here. They did get Tezcatlipoca correct in that his name actually translates to Smoking Mirror, which, as you know, is the name of the game. Good old Tezza was connected to mirrors because back in the day the mirrors were made with obsidian, and he was often depicted with an obsidian knife. Then again, he was associated with many things. Night skies, for example, the night winds, hurricanes, hostility and discord, rulership, temptation, beauty, war and conflict. All lovely things in life that we really can't get enough of. There are other things that aren't quite as bad, but in the context of why this guy really didn't like the statue, you can kind of see why. I did try to find out if Tezcatlipoca was seen as a bad omen, and like many ancient deities, the answer is yes, but also no, but probably depends on his mood. Kind of like Zeus in Greek mythology, it really depends on who you are talking to, why you were talking to them about Tezcatlipoca or Zeus in the first place, and whether they were about to be sacrificed in his name, or I guess, other things in Zeus's name. You might have heard of Quetzalcoatl, which I cannot say, so I apologize, who ends up being used in many JRPGs and fantasy games. Well, Quetz and Tezza are pretty much tied together in mythology. They are basically the Aztec creationist story, to put it very simply. Tezcatlipoca has a festival called Toxcatl, and to tie it back to the intro, yes, people were sacrificed during it. Which wasn't a new thing or a surprising thing for Aztecs, from what I can see. Now, Broken Sword isn't, as far as I know, written by historians, and they were written to be fun adventures, so this isn't really that important. I did like, when looking up some of the Templar stuff, how they had managed to keep it pretty close, and I guess getting Mayans and Aztecs confused with each other, or using Mayans as a catch-all term for Mesoamerican cultures, isn't that big of a deal, especially for a 1997 point-and-click game. I personally knew nothing about this and just looked up Tezcatlipoca to get some more information on him for this part of the video. I think I did also look up the Friday the 13th history for the first video, so it's similar to that. Also, I apologize if I got all of the names wrong. I'm but a simple bear with a simple ability to say even the simplest of words badly. Back to Quaramonte, and the story here is very self-contained. There are some small inventory puzzles, but a lot of the puzzles here are dialogue-based. Now bear with me on this one, okay? For example, we walk into the police station to find General Graciento talking to Ubier. They are looking at a map, and then Ubier leaves.
Ah, I have visitors.
Just remember what I told you, General. There's really no need to make a martyr out of that man.
To see the map, you need to empty the entire police station out. Which, okay, is only 2 people, but still. Why do you need to look at the map? Well, you need to look because you want to know where Ubier is planning on going. But also, you've heard about a mining incident that happened, and this lady here won't give you a detonator, which you need to help get the musician out of jail for Dwayne, who is doing this under the CIA's orders, apparently, or some such.
George, I'm on a top-secret classified mission for Uncle Sam. This truck is a rolling bomb. 400 pounds of nitrate fertilizer with a plastique initiator. They'll hear the bang in China. Gee, I'm really looking forward to this.
Unless you find out more about this incident. Still with me? Good. So, to empty out the police station, you noticed whilst talking to Graciento that he flirts with Nico, and as the game allows you to ask Nico to help you in situations like this, you can ask Nico to keep him busy. She'll go off and interview him.
You hear that, Ronaldo? An exclusive glossy spread about your beloved General.
Si, Signor General.
And you've gotten rid of your Nepo baby, but that still leaves this guy. We had asked Graciento if someone could take Pearl on a tour of the sightseeing spots. You see, Pearl and Dwayne aren't talking because he doesn't want to go sightseeing and she does.
Because he's an old spoil sport sourpuss. I want to visit one of those old pyramid places, but Dwayne says he has to stay in town.
Right. And you don't want to go on your own.
Well, there's no point in going to the pyramid if there's no one around to take my picture.
This guy here can take her, but he has a lot of work to do first. But with Graciento gone, you can talk to him and tell him that Pearl wants a tour and he'll leave, thus leaving the police station open to check the map and get behind to talk to the musician. Again, small parts of this will be inventory based, with you needing items to move along the plot, but it isn't really a puzzle with items. The puzzle here is about listening to people, what they want, what they don't want, how to figure out how to move them, and achieving their needs just by talking to other people. Compared to a more hands-on puzzle, it can feel rather slow, but if you just listen to what people want and what they say to you, remember that you can indeed also talk to Nico at times as well for some hints, you should be getting through this part fast. Some things though. First up, I know this TV show is meant to be an action show. You can click on it and George talks to you about it. And I'm sure this blonde person is meant to be a guy because again, I'm pretty sure George says that. But I just headcanoned that it was Ubier's wife in some adult show, and Graciento had the balls to watch it in front of Ubier because I want to give Graciento some merit that he might be a badass. He isn't, but I'm gonna say he is. That being said, it is mainly the start of a fun yet understated look into Graciento's character itself. He is about the only character that gets a little bit of a growth during the game, and at first you might not really notice it because it is very small. He is a nepo baby, and everyone around him knows it. He isn't good at his job, and he isn't intimidating at all. Therefore, the only thing people really fear about him is his mother, who is in charge of the village.
So the general is nothing but a puppet?
He's like Pinocchio before he met the Blue Rinse Fairy. Strictly strings and wood.
Who's pulling the strings?
His mother. Better known as La Presidenta, the dictator.
He genuinely takes to Nico though. I guess it is just because she's pretty in French, but during the game you do get to see a different side to him, which I will bring up as we go along. Right now though, he's a jerk that I like to headcanon watches porn in the middle of the day to upset everyone around him, because that is Graciento to me. He also isn't as stupid as he looks. I mean, he is rather stupid, but he does try to hide his connection to Ubier and Karzak, even if he slips up a little, and I think that deserves some credit. He's at least smart enough to know what he shouldn't know, but also again, why would he even admit that he knew anything in particular to a nosy American that just waltzes in off the street? We're in Quaramonte and suddenly he's got like 3 Americans just being annoying around him. Like, why would he talk to us? With the police station empty, you can help Dwayne with his business at hand to free the musician. I do want to add this one bit in to show that George is still just as rude as ever to women.
She was less obviously deranged.
But yeah, Pearl is long gone, and we can talk to Dwayne, who is talking to Ubier. Ubier will talk to us. He doesn't really see any point in not talking. He admits that Karzak is funding his expedition. You can dig into whether or not he killed his wife, and he'll give the lowdown on Tezcatlipoca, if you want to hear it, that is.
Can you identify this statue, Professor?
Oh, yes. Tezcatlipoca, the Lord of Darkness.
A Central American god, right?
A supreme deity. Tezcatlipoca means, literally, smoking mirror. There. You see the mirror shield in his left hand? The Mayans believed he could look into the mirror and see into the hearts of men. He was the wind which came howling in the night in search of victims, and victims they gave him by the thousand.
Human sacrifices?
Men, women, children, animals, anything that bled. The steps of his temple ran red with the blood of sacrifices. The Mayans have a legend that says he'll return one day. I hope I'm not around to see it.
We also get a confirmation that he hasn't been home for 7 months, so whatever happened at his mansion wouldn't have had anything to do with him, George. He also doesn't have anyone working for him. I guess he meant as in home, like butlers or servants or something, because he does then go on to mention a secretary who works for him, but like, I guess that's just, you know, he probably has one at work and not someone that works at his house. In many ways, Ubier is much like Pilgrim in the first game, some bumbling historian poking their noses into things they shouldn't be, and getting in trouble with forces beyond their understanding. We never got to see what happened to Pilgrim, but spoiler alert, we do get to see what happens to Ubier. We do. He then brings up the end of the Fifth Age, and look, even I know of that one. That was meant to be 2012. You know, the one that has the film about it, the disaster film called 2012. Well, kinda. Because the Fifth Age, also known as the Fifth Sun from everything I can see, is once again an Aztec thing, and it wasn't marked with an eclipse, but earthquakes. That being said, they feared eclipses because they believed it was linked to the death of Tunothuth? I can't say that one. What is that? Tonotooth? Let me have a look online.
Tonatu.
The god of the Fifth Age. Their sacrifices were done to keep the sun alight, and a lot of fear and panic happened during eclipses. This is a layman's very quick look into all of this. The Mayans, and I'm sure most older civilizations, feared the eclipse. Who wouldn't when the sun is often seen as a bringer of life, and suddenly with no explanation, it's dark? But none of what Ubier said is really relevant, and probably just made up the little they seem to know of Mesoamerican culture to make it seem a bit sexy. Or at least that is what I can see from insomnia-ridden highs of looking on the internet at Mayan and Aztec culture to figure out whether Broken Sword 2 is talking sense. When Ubier is out of things to talk to, he'll leave, and we'll get to talk to Dwayne ourselves. Editing Bear here. I have to stop myself here to say this isn't quite how it goes. Ubier won't leave after you talk to him. You do have to talk to Dwayne once with Ubier there, where he doesn't say very much, and then you can come back later and get the news of him being there on the CIA's orders to save the musician. But at the time of talking to Ubier, he will just talk to you like he's fun old Dwayne. So I'm a bit wrong here. But that doesn't really matter, because everything I say after this is just Dwayne anyway, regardless of who stood next to him. But it is interesting that he won't talk to you properly until Ubier is gone, and it's nice to see that things like that change the game. You know, if Ubier is just stood there, you can't talk to Dwayne openly. It's a nice little touch, but I am wrong. There is this thing. Ubier doesn't leave. I'm a moron. Continue. Dwayne is just as confused as he ever was, but he gives us the information we need. P.S. Dwayne tells us nothing, but I love Dwayne, so shh. And not only that, he also had a dog biscuit eating thing going on apparently. Or at least he was forced to because of Pearl's shopping habits or something like that.
Would you like a biscuit, Dwayne?
Oh no, those gourmet dog snacks bring me out in a rash.
You've tried them?
They were on special offer. Pearl bought a whole crate. When I asked her if she was thinking of keeping a dog too, she just laughed.
So, to get the prisoner out of the prison, Dwayne wanted a detonator. You can now get that from the lady in the mining corporation because you can see the map in the police station and tell her about it. This office is also just funny. She won't talk to George at first because she's like uber pro female girl boss or something.
I was talking to the lady, Chico.
Her secretary, or whatever he is, also just walks around in a thong, which, you know what, good on them. It must be hot out there, so why not air out the cake a little, as long as they're all happy.
Nice buns.
With all this done, you can go into the cell block to talk to the prisoner and keep him away from the wall. Just Reynold, the guard who I hadn't named to this point in the retrospective for whatever reason, comes back from taking Pearl on her sightseeing and locks you up too, which, you know what, fair, we shouldn't be here. The prisoner was already depressed and very confused on how George was ever gonna help him out. I'm not sure this filled him with any kind of hope.
I should have known you'd be trouble the moment I saw you.
Look, I can explain everything.
Get in that cell, now.
And what if I refuse? He'll shoot you. Okay, here I am, going quietly into the cell.
Very wise, not Americano scum.
One of the reasons I hate guns so much is the way they make people so damned impolite.
We then flash back to Nico again and the General, because this game actually was the first game to allow you to play as Nico, albeit just in small doses. Shadow of the Templars Director Scott did add in a few puzzles with Nico, but as I said in the first retrospective, I probably want to look at that game on its own sometime, and the puzzles with Nico really don't add much to the overall story. There isn't much to do here, and it really is where you start to see who Graciento is. He tries to flirt with Nico, who is there to interview him. She doesn't really take to it, so he just turns on the TV and lets her do her thing, which is standing around looking at stuff, obviously, because what else would you do? From this, you can pretty much see that the guy is extremely immature. The minute his flirting got him nowhere, he is just content with sitting around and watching an action TV show, whilst the girl of his dreams is just looking at things and questioning things. Because why? Why not? The reason he probably is immature shows up as soon as you've looked around though, and of course it is Mother Dearest.
Mom!
What is going on here?
Nothing, Mom. I was...
I'm in uniform. And when I'm in uniform, it's...
Madame la Presidente, sorry, Madame la Presidente.
Nico will play dumb to get on Mummy's good side, and we go back to George, who now has to figure out how to get him and another person out of the cell that he was trying to get the other person out of in the first place, but now he is also stuck in it. You don't have much you can do, so the puzzle here is pretty obvious. Dwayne wants to blow everything up in true American style. Sadly, the explosives don't work for whatever reason, and Dwayne has just been sat in a truck with horse crap in the back for no reason for hours. All the time, the musician is listening in and getting more and more depressed, because so would I. I've seen these people at work before, my dude. You have little to no chance of them ever making any sense, but they will save you. Other than your current inventory, you only have one other item you can interact with, a noose that has been put in the musician's cell by Renaud. Because that wasn't dark at all to begin with, we had to add a noose as well. If you take the rope and give it to Dwayne, he'll pull the side of the wall off the building, and you and the prisoner will escape.
I'd had no idea whether this was really going to work, but I'd seen it in a black and white western. Of course, Hopalong was using a horse, and Dwayne had a 4-ton truck, but hey, the principle's sound.
Anything you say, George.
The game will quickly cut to Nico, who is in the middle of having to listen to Graciento being beat down verbally by his mother, again showing that he was never going to be good enough for her regardless of what he did, and showing that his love for his mother is more based on fear than anything else, before the commotion at the jail starts up and Nico leaves.
What the hell was that?
I didn't know what was going on, but George had to be involved in it somewhere.
George won't leave till Nico gets there. When she does, they'll leave, and Renaud will apprehend Dwayne before Graciento shows up and announces they have the wrong Americans, which is like, how does he even know they're the wrong Americans? I guess he just guessed because he probably figured out that Nico was the decoy, but Dwayne was actually the correct American for the actual crime being committed, and George, because obviously Nico is an American, so she doesn't count in this, was for once semi-innocent of all this. I mean, semi, because he was just helping an old friend. It was Dwayne's whole mastermind plan, thing, plot. George was just there for a change. For a change. Either way, Nico and George get on a boat that, for some reason, is blown up by a helicopter, and that's Quaramonte done and dusted. All very action-packed, and it is the first time Broken Sword truly goes down the Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider route of being action-packed like this. Shadows of the Templar had its moments, but it wasn't all guns blazing at all. Now this isn't a criticism, it's just an observation of where the series will go. 3 being made into a 3D game tries to emulate a little of the fast-paced gameplay of the Tomb Raider series with their puzzles, whilst 4 is a mess that tries, I guess, to do something. 5 does go back to its roots, and it is interesting to see how the series kind of develops over time. Back to this game though, and Georgie Boy is waking up alone on a beach. Probably not the first time that's happened to him either. We'll wander into the jungle to look for Nico, who is missing, and stumble upon a random treehouse with organ music coming out of it. Of course, whomever lives here has no staircase to their front door and can't hear over the music. Being in the jungle, I doubt they have many visitors, so there isn't like there are many ways to get their attention either. This can be a bit of an annoying puzzle if you aren't observant. Hi, I am not observant. I have played this game so many times in my lifetime, and still to this day can forget what I have to do in this puzzle because I'm not observant. This is me. This is a call out for myself. What I mean by this is that there is this little animation on this one bush down here. That is your giant clue that it is something to be interacted with. This area actually also has this beautiful water wheel. I just want to mention it because it does look beautiful. I'm pretty sure the reason I always forget about the leaves is because I'm too busy looking at this. It's just wonderful. It's mesmerizing. What we have to do here is basically start a fire using these rustling leaves and items in our inventory. With a small fire starting, the inhabitant of the treehouse will come out to see what's going on, and finally we can talk to them. After we put the fire out first, that is.
Quick, man! Put out that fire! I've got a sick woman up here.
Sorry, Father, but I needed to attract your attention.
Because fire just solves all our problems, guys, but we don't want to be irresponsible in a jungle. Having the bushes you interact with being animated is a great way to visually show that this puzzle is going to include the environment. Broken Sword 1 and 2 are both wonderfully hand-drawn, and you can be a little lost in the ambience of any given screen you are on. For people paying attention, these leaves doing a little rustle in the wind will at some point, as they struggle to figure out what to do, pique their interest. Or, like me, they could just stumble around the screen getting more and more annoyed that George just wouldn't chuck something through a bloody window. Like, come on, you must be able to chuck something up there. Turns out, this guy is Father Hubert. He does have Nico in his treehouse. He found her washed up on the shore and apparently has been poisoned by one of the many dangerous snakes around. Nico, that is, not Herbert. He has his own problems. That being said, it does take forever for George to realize he's even talking about Nico. Even though Hubert literally asked George if we can speak French because the poor girl is talking in French, nothing clicks with George for the longest of time. With Nico's life on the line, you can of course waste time asking random questions, and boy does Hubert have a story to tell. Basically, he's been stranded here for 11 years. Stranded, I'm not sure how, seeing that it isn't that far away from civilization, but stranded. How many times can I say stranded? A couple more times, probably. He doesn't want to go to the local village with you to help you talk to the tribe there because he had an embarrassing incident there. Yeah, this bit gets very silly, and it's kind of pointless. It's basically a build-up to Hubert having had a night at a festival, letting himself go, and now he has a bunch of kids in the village. The whole joke is basically, haha, horny priest. But this whole part for me is badly done anyway. I do love that Hubert calls it the...
Yes, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I found myself doing the monkey dance.
I've never heard it called that before.
Though it turns out that that is just kind of the festival's name he was attending, as George also gets invited to it later. Maybe it's not even a festival, maybe it's just a thing they do, I don't really know. That being said, he doesn't live far away from that village either. All he basically asks you to do is straighten out his collar so that he looks the part, and when you get there, you find out he's just avoiding raising his 3 girls and 5 boys. Oh, and all this is embarrassing enough that he would let someone die because the embarrassment to him is more painful, I guess. Because this is the only way to save Nico's life, but he won't take you there. He, like, hums and has about it, like, Nico's dying and he's too worried about maybe being told that he has to be a better father.
In the meantime, I must contemplate my sermon.
Like, seriously, dude, this is a tribe of people in the jungle. I doubt the ladies of the village are out there trying to get child support from you. You are less than a day's walk from the village itself, and if anyone there were angry enough, I'm sure they would have dragged you back by now. You could just take George to them and help save a life. Which, he does take us to the village before instantly leaving because he's too embarrassed to stay.
This is George. He has a request to make. I'm afraid I can't stay. Good luck, George.
Then we have these guards who have the most lemonhead English-speaking voices imaginable. To explain why they're wearing clothes, not that we needed an explanation, there is a joke about Herbert giving them underwear as a present, probably because he didn't like naked men walking around for whatever reason, but whatever. And then they also have the running joke that George was told he was here to talk to the wise man, but it just ended up being the shaman, and the guards don't think he's very wise.
She's real sick. I hoped your wise man might have medicine.
Wise man? You must have the wrong village.
which I guess is proven when we have to give a gift to the shaman and send him the dog biscuits and he just eats them all, I guess. With the box returned, you can put the stone we got all the way back in Glee's gallery from Andre in the box, and the shaman will now see you. There is this little fun back and forth with the guard whilst we're waiting for confirmation that the shaman will see us, though.
What do you do for entertainment here in the jungle?
We make documentaries. Me and Tabtic, we've appeared in 7 TV films and an article in National Geographic.
But again, it felt kind of like they'd seen the natives in Monkey Island and wanted a similar joke, but had to stay away from this silly stuff that Monkey Island did with cannibals and stuff, so did this instead. It isn't bad, I'm being more harsh on it than I probably should be, but the entire bit just didn't necessarily work for me. It's just kind of there, it's fine, it's a part of the story that you can forget, but all of the jokes kind of just didn't work for me. You don't necessarily learn anything new in this section from the shaman himself. You get a lovely cutscene where the shaman basically puts the story of Tezcatlipoca into order for you and kind of solidifies what you're doing and what you have to do. We do get the explanation of these stones, though.
Many years ago, when the world was young, the great god and king Quetzalcoatl was defeated by trickery and deceit. His enemy Tezcatlipoca took his place as leader and demanded terrible human sacrifices. A group of loyal priests found a way to trap Tezcatlipoca. But his powers were so great, they knew he would not remain trapped forever. His time of incarceration would end with the eclipse, which marked the close of the 5th age. So the priests fashioned 3 obsidian stones which contained the power to seal the mirror for all time. But before the stones could be put in place, they were seized by the invading Spanish.
You see, the stones will be what sealed the smoking mirror. Title drop, game over, let's go. But in the past, they were captured by the Spanish because fuck the Europeans and their plundering ways. Thankfully, we have one of the stones, and it is obvious we'll have to find the other 2 as soon as Nico is able to get up and move again. Now, this is a massive change from the first game, in my opinion. You might not feel that way, but I do. Shadows of the Templar was a longer game. It drip-fed you information as you went along. You started off chasing a murderer, got introduced to a Templar plot, learned you were tracking an ancient form of assassins, and traveled the world trying to find random things on a random scroll you had to steal from said assassin in the first place. In this, you kind of bumbled around the place for no reason and now just being told what to do, and you'll head off to do it. Again, in Shadows, you're very much given clues on how to find things. It is how Andre is introduced in the first place. No one person knows everything you need to know. In this, we go from knowing nothing to knowing everything very fast, and there isn't even much trouble finding where we need to go for the stones themselves. Much like the change from slow-burning mystery game to semi-action-oriented game, it isn't a bad thing, but it's a very noticeable change between the 2 games. I wouldn't even say it was a drop in quality of writing, but Smoking Mirror does lack the depth that the first game felt it had. Back to the game though, and George spends the night because it is apparently too late to go back to the treehouse, and because the game will not let go of the monkey dance joke, they just make it again. We cut to the next morning with George back at the treehouse, just he's been given a root, and of course Nico isn't going to be able to just eat a root in her state, so you have to kind of juice the root. This is basically the only reason the game made you straighten out the priest's collar earlier. It was to show you how this machine over here works, so that you can just do the same thing with the root and liquefy it so that Nico can drink it. She also is nearly instantly better, which makes me think that Hubert is a bit overly dramatic. Also, he's been stuck here for 11 years. He says he's stranded, but we just kind of leave. So the game then just kind of lets you know that Nico and George are split up, as in to search for the stones, not in the other way. I don't think they're together at the minute anyway. Weirdly, George gets to go on a sunny holiday to the Caribbean, whilst poor Nico gets to visit a place I'm sure every French lady is dying to visit. London. Probably on a rainy day too, because it's London, in a point-and-click game set in the 90s. We start with George on the sunny island though, because we do know that one of the stones was taken by a pirate, and his home was on the island. And who would have guessed, but his relatives are still here with a whole museum dedicated to him. First up though, we arrive to our destination and we're faced with this guy. He's been hired to renovate the museum. He's rude, but to be fair on him, George is also self-centered and rude anyway. The guy isn't nice, but it is another time when the game allows itself to not take George so seriously, and to give some realism back. This guy's thing is he's scamming the two old ladies. We don't know this yet, but the guy won't really entertain us in any way to begin with, which leaves George having this breakdown.
Hey, get out of there.
You know, wherever I go, I hear those words. Paris, Syria, Ireland, or Spain. Makes no difference.
What do you think you're doing?
I was trying to show some interest in your project.
It is perfect American tourist, and just kind of funny. The lack of awareness that no one in their right mind is going to say anything to him is just hilarious. When the guy finally does listen to us, he then calls us crazy, and he's kind of right.
Yeah, right. What brings you here, anyway?
I'm searching for an ancient Mayan artifact.
What is it? Some kind of jewel?
No, it's obsidian. A black stone with supposedly mystic powers.
You're nuts.
If there is one thing that I will give Broken Sword time and time again, it is self-awareness of how batshit crazy everything they have George do is. Now we know that George is going to find these stones because we need to, but to a random guy on a random beach that had the blonde bombshell that is George Stobbart dropped on him, I think this is quite a normal reaction.
Ha ha. That's rich. Listen, I got work to do, okay?
Next up, you meet this kid here. He's fishing because why not? I like that this kid is kind of the Syrian kid redone. He's smarter than he looks, whilst also being childlike and dumb in his own ways. His name is Rio, and we'll get to him in a bit, because whilst he gives us some nice background to where we are, he won't help us, as he's scared of the guy on the beach. We have a cat.
Hi, Puss. Wanna play? Hey, cat. Watch where you're putting those claws.
Then we get to the ladies. I love that George is confused there would be a museum for a pirate. And I'm here in one of the most pirate-centric areas of the UK thinking, well, yes, there would be. Not only just because people like pirates, but because history is important, and piracy was part of history. I'm pretty sure I've been to a few pirate museums in Cornwall, and I wouldn't be surprised if I've just missed out on any here in Plymouth as well. We for sure have a pirate weekend every year in May. It's usually the weekend before my birthday as well. George, pirates are just fucking cool, okay? You went to a gallery earlier that just had pots in it, and you're whining about a pirate museum? Pirates are so much cooler than pots! Mina and Frost don't believe that Ketch was a pirate regardless, and we get a little bit of a Weatherwax Og dynamic going on. Smoking Mirror lacks Lady P, so instead we have these two biddies that remind me of Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker from James and the Giant Peach, as well as Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og from the Discord, as I just said. They aren't actually bad in the same way that Aunt Sponge and Spiker are. They are to a point mini Lady Ps in their own right, because never forget, rich British ladies equal small battalions of anger no matter where they are in the world. This is indeed a true fact, even in the real world. This isn't even a joke. We get a little lowdown on Frederick Ketch, so let me condense this down. Born somewhere in Dorset, which is 2 counties up from me, during the reign of my hero King Henry VIII, that's an old joke, no one's gonna get that one, Ketch was born to farmers. Because of course he was, he came from Dorset, that's all they do in Dorset is farm. At a young age he wanted to sail the seas and did go to sea with John Hawkins. Now Ketch himself doesn't seem to be based on a real person, but John Hawkins might actually refer to Admiral Sir John Hawkins, who was a naval commander from Plymouth, actually. So yeah, he's just a hometown boy for me. Before anyone asks, this was the 1500s, so yes, he was also a slave trader, who was one of the first English merchants to profit from the triangle trade selling enslaved Africans to Spanish colonies in the West Indies. And I'm only just learning, or knew a long time ago and forgot, because to be fair, I'm sick of naval history coming from a naval town, that he is a cousin with Sir Francis Drake, who for some reason is the more prominent name in Plymouth, even though he was actually born in Tavistock, which isn't far from Plymouth, but still isn't actually Plymouth. Like our huge, ugly mall is called Drake's Circus, but I guess Hawkins Circus would just sound really dumb. It actually sounds like something straight out of Stranger Things, but like that was built long before Stranger Things was even a concept. Here, have some photos of ducks from the last time I went to Tavistock. I'm sure they still have ducks. I've been agoraphobic for 4 years now and haven't left my house, but ducks tend to like being in rivers, so just imagine it was from last month. I know I do. As I said, I can't find anything about a Frederick Ketch, but there is a famous John Ketch who was Charles II's executioner. Apparently he botched so many executions, the term Jack Ketch was used as a proverbial name for death, Satan for some reason, and executioners. He was not a captain or a pirate, though. He was an executioner. Back to Story Catch, though, and he was the one who stole the Jaguar Stone from a Spanish ship that had been blown up. He returned back to England to escape the Spanish, and then settled down on the island in the Caribbean. Being jealous of the wealth he made for himself being a privateer, the British governor potentially made up some charges about breaking the conditions of his letter of marque and had him hung. Letters of marque were also a very real thing as well, being basically a document allowing you to attack and capture vessels from anyone at war with the British government. In this time period, probably mainly the Spanish, because if there was one country we hated more than the French, it was the Spanish. So anything Ketch had done would have been okay under this letter and would have made him wealthy, but if he had broken it, would probably have ended up seeing him face some kind of treason charge. Never say you don't learn anything here. Pirates, Aztecs, lore about Plymouth. If there was one thing I tried to do more of in this video from the first, it was actually look up some of the historical mumble-jumble the game throws at you to see if it made any sense. Of course, this is just a video game, and it bashing together ideologies and historical things from all over the place and romanticizing it all is fine. I'm not picking it out and whining about it, I just find it interesting. Fun and a lore, I actually wanted to grow up to be a historian. It was always something that's been interesting to me, which is probably one of the reasons that the Broken Sword franchise has always been a favorite of mine. Mina herself tells us they have many seamen in their family.
We have plenty of seamen in our family, Mr. Stobbart.
Which instantly marks her as the sponge og of the duo, which is great because again, she's the fat one, which is the life of the horny part of the old woman duo. The two things we learn in this conversation that are important is one, that they trust Bronson completely, and two, that Rio and their relative Emily have a thing. What thing we don't know, they are legit children, but they have a thing. Also, yes, this does mean we get 2 children, and no, we are not safe from one of these kids being annoying. Emily isn't awful, but she is the annoying child stereotype.
What you doing, Jaws?
I've put the lantern in the inkwell. See? It fits.
Why?
Because it was cut to fit.
Why?
Because sneaky old Captain Ketch made it that way.
Why?
What is with all the questions?
'Cause I'm interested.
Why?
'Cause I have the insatiable curiosity of the young.
Why?
All right, truce.
Thankfully, just telling the two that Emily is at the beach will move them, which gives you a chance to inspect the house a little. You can't get in because it's locked, but there is a ladder that you can place up against the wall. Sadly, the windows are also locked. We do have flagpoles though, and some device on one of them. This is all to do with Bronson. I don't really get all this builder talk, but he's using it to figure out where things are. This is all you can really do right now, so you need to go and talk to Rio again. Rio wants something in exchange for a fish. You can give him Nichols' panties, but I resisted the urge and just gave him the grub from the beginning of the game, showing that there is always a use for random stuff that George keeps in his pocket. Sadly, the fishing stuff does take time, so you do need to leave Rio before you can get anything from him. First up, he easily fishes up a bicycle somehow, and we can take the inner tube from that.
Hey, I got a bite!
You have?
It's a big one! A real big one!
Reel him in, Rio. Jeez, it must be a whale or something.
Rustiest whale I ever see.
We do then get a fish, thankfully, and the next puzzle is a little on the weird side. You basically dangle the fish from the flagpole via the inner tube you took from the bike to keep the cat busy as you steal its ball. You can then take the inner tube back, automatically giving the fish to the cat, and then use the inner tube with this random U-shaped branch in the background to make a slingshot to knock the marker down with the ball. And yeah, it is probably the most convoluted puzzle Broken Sword has given you, and thankfully George managed to hit the little marker up here first try because he won't be getting that ball back probably anyway. But also, if he can make this really easily, why couldn't he have thrown something at the treehouse? The question though here is, why are we even doing this? We're doing this because Bronson needs to be distracted so that we can go down to the beach and see that he's going to turn the museum into a tacky hotel. He'll climb up to reattach a marker, so just take the ladder away and head onto the beach.
What you doing, Bronson? Just hanging around?
I'm gonna kill you for this, Stobbart! Get me down from here!
What, so you can kill me? Gee, you talked me out of it, Bronson. I felt a little guilty about leaving Bronson up there, but not much, obviously.
I do love the fact that when we come back up, the sisters are just sat and tell us to help him. Neither could just put the ladder up and help him themselves. They'll happily sit down for tea whilst this man is hanging on for his life. Sadly, we aren't going to help him because we're George. We just give the sisters the plans and they decide to hit him with their umbrella after this perfect line from Mina.
Mina, we have been duped. I'm glad we didn't sign his contract.
Oh, I hate tricksters, especially confident ones.
Come, Mina.
They open the door and yes, poor Nico ended up in rainy London going to the British Museum. Poor Nico. Our two Japanese tourists are back giggling and looking at pots, much like they were in Paris. Why they had to come back, I don't know, but at least Nico is as annoyed at them as George is.
What's so funny?
Nico instantly finds the Jaguar Stone in a case next to the Japanese girls. You can click around to see some of the exhibits, but mainly you just need to see that that's there. We get a Francis Drake name drop because of course we do, and then much like the Croon Museum in the first game, we get to talk to the curator. Well, I guess in the first game it was actually a security guard that made up stories about everything on display, but never mind, I miss him, he was funny. So, old Draco was obviously Francis Drake. Makes sense if the stones went missing around the time of Hawkins. The curator is very helpful, but refuses to let us near the stones because obviously he wouldn't. I just like that we go to museums often, and people working there are just completely aghast at everyone around them. Amazingly, after leaving him in Quaramonte, Nico finally comes face to face with Ubier. Now, I apologize for this. This is going to sound awful because it's coming from me, an extremely British bear. He gives us a name, Chichen Itza, which is a real place that is known for being Mayan, that does have a pyramid-type structure called El Castillo, or Temple of Kukulkan? Kukulkan. It's starting to sound like a Mortal Kombat thing. This temple is, as the name hints, the Temple of Kukulkan, who in turn is related to the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, who, if you've been keeping up, is the enemy, kind of Tezcatlipoca. So it all comes round in the end, as you can see. Chichen Itza is a real place though, real pyramid, probably where we'll end up in this game, even though it is actually the Mayans' version of Quetzalcoatl's temple. I mean, that is unless we go somewhere else, let's wait and see. Whilst it is nice to give Nico some things to do, her parts in this aren't that stellar. The museum is quite boring. You talk to the curator, who then lets you talk to Ubier, who then leaves. You find out that someone stole the stone as you were talking to people, so you yourself steal an obsidian dagger. Where have we heard about one of them before? And escape just to go back to George. The problem with Nico-centric sections, anytime that there is a Nico-centric section, is that they kind of feel forced in. That is one of the reasons I'm not a fan of it in the director's cut for one either. It was the problem it had, that it just felt kind of forced. Back to George, and his dumbness comes out as he tries to read this.
March 20th, 1676. Engaged frigate off Fan Salvador? It was garbage. Huh. I guess being a pirate didn't require too many academic qualifications.
For a man that can read Latin, not knowing that old writing tended to make S's look like F's is a weird one. You can look around the museum and you'll find Emily in a treasure chest. Maybe we should have left her in there, but something she has on her catches your eye. Again, this is a simple enough puzzle and pretty well thought out. You basically have to figure out where Ketch would have left his treasure. To do so, you need to use his desk. There are indents in the desk for certain things, including a map. So you just have to find these items in this room to stick in the desk to figure out where exactly you need to be going. Also, I love some of the description of Mina.
Mina isn't crazy, she's just engagingly eccentric.
Yeah, as a bedbug.
Aunt Mina's cuckoo. Aunt Frost says so. She says when the Lord handed out common sense, Aunt Mina was off getting double portions of chin.
It is cruel, but I kind of find it funny. Again, very much the nanny og of the two women. So you need this cross, but Emily will only give it to you if you give her something she wants. What does a kid want? Well, we have another kid to ask, and as long as you've taken the feather quill from the desk, you can trade a feather to one child for a conch, to give to another child for the cross. And then with the lamplet on the desk, voila, Zombie Island. Yes, we're going to somewhere called Zombie Island. I don't know why we get this.
Can I come too?
The hell you can.
I never get to leave the house.
But boy, does it make me feel sad for a little girl stuck on an island with two miserable old women who won't let her play with the only other child her age around. Yeah, I would be a pain in the ass too, Emily. You enjoy your conch as I go to bother the other child Rio to take me to an island. Rio will take us to the island, but he'll leave us here by this cliff. I don't know why he doesn't take us to a beach. We go to a beach in a second, but yeah, he takes us here. We then need to ask him for his net to help us climb up, all Spider-Man-like, but that is the end of this part of that section, because we're going to go back to the underground with Nico, and I mean the London Underground. Again, her section is very simple, very fast. You won't need to be stuck here for too long. You basically need to figure out a way to get a train to stop, because it won't stop at this abandoned station anymore. This whole bit is, in my opinion, a little messy. London isn't an exciting place to be sent to. Nico doesn't have any enthusiasm or great conversations, and in fact, in this part of the game, doesn't talk to anyone. She just goes about trying to stop the train. It felt needed to make sure the game was shorter in a way. If you had sent George to both places, you'd have to make London a much more interesting place to be. Sending Nico there instead and having it intertwine with the much more interesting stuff happening in the Caribbean cuts out all of the extra characters you might have to have, the longer puzzles you might have to have, and so on and so forth. It's sad that we're saying that because Nico deserves to have some time as well, but it's just one of those things, I guess. It was nice to have Nico be a playable character, which she isn't in the first game, unless you played the director's cut first, in which case she is. But she really was just there in this game to rush gathering the stones up. She hasn't found the stone, or she did, but it has also been stolen, but it just saves time. Back to George, and we have the bane of all adventure game fans. Pointless maze-like areas. But I quite like this one, even though you can get very lost. There are a couple openings in front of you. One will lead you to this area with this boar who ain't a happy lad. You can't do anything here yet, so take the upper path, which is where you can get a little lost. There are a few bits and pieces you need to pick up, and it can be difficult to figure out where the game allows you to walk and where it won't let you walk. You could just end up walking around in circles, but what you do need to pick up is this reed here, then to get the...
The creature disappeared again, but I caught a glimpse of something small and furry. It was home to something with more teeth and kind thoughts in its head.
To chew off the end of this reed. You can then use the blow dart with the reed to shoot the boar, making sure to grab the branch above you and to avoid being trampled by it afterwards. It isn't long, but it can feel like a long moment, purely as the very small maze can be confusing. If you know what you're looking for, then you're going to be fine. It can also be very difficult because obviously hitboxes and so on and so forth, but it's not the worst kind of maze you could ever be trapped in. Behind the boar is a monument that you can have George attempt to climb. He can, but if you use the marker with the net, then combine them with the creepers, you can chuck it all over the top of the needle and give yourself a marker. The path the boar created behind you will take you to the top of the island, and you can use the theodolite, the machine that you stole from Bronson on the beach, to look out at the valley. You move the view of the theodolite by putting the cursor on the side of the screen till it turns into this hand symbol. There are a bunch of things you can click on, but you're mainly right now looking for the sparkling light from the marker. This is also a bit of a pain because the light is at the bottom of the screen, and you can easily click out of the theodolite. I don't like saying theodolite. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I don't think I am. But yeah, you can click out of it. This is because the hitbox to leave it actually starts before the hitbox of the marker. You need to wait till the game says you are on the marker to touch it, and you need to interact with it, else the game won't realize what it is that George is trying to look at. If you do click out of it, it restarts itself where it originally was aiming, and you have to go back to positioning it. If you end up clicking a lot to the right or the left of the theodolite, it will continue to move even after you finish clicking, and you do have to then click in the opposite direction to get it to stop. I kind of like that, but it's also annoying. It isn't bad per se, but it is a bit clunky. When you click on the marker, you can then click on the rock outcrop behind it to find out where you need to go. Now, to get down the hill, you have to exit from the right. Going back down the left will just send you to the swamp, which brings me to a fun fact. If, for some reason, you don't jump out of the way of the boar, your shortcut here won't open. To stop you getting soft-locked, there is another way that is kind of hidden to get to the hill, and that is on this screen. You'll see the 3 obvious paths to the left, right, and center of the screen, but there is also a path here that isn't easy to see. This takes you to the backdrop of this screen, letting you leave off to the right side and make it to the top of the hill. Honestly, it is easy to miss the branch, and therefore miss that you should get out of the way of the boar. He doesn't hurt you either way, and it just gives an extra reason for the swamp to be so large for no reason. We then sweep back to Nico. It might feel like a bit of whiplash going back and forth, but trying to play it compared to talking about it obviously takes a little longer. This video is going to be whiplashy for this part, but the game isn't as whiplashy. Nico has managed to track down Ubia, and to be fair, this is one of my favorite puzzles with Nico, and one of my favorite puzzles in the game, full stop. Again, it's very much a situational, environmental puzzle, which is one kind that I really enjoy, especially in Broken Sword 2. You have this guy parading around the ship, this other guard just off on the side. What you have to do is lock the guy circling the ship in this little room, and you can do so by being all sneaky. You'll run onto the ship and climb up the ladder just to close the door and lock it with the broom. There is some timing to this, but it isn't overly difficult to do, but in a way it is nice that it is dangerous. The game doesn't shy away from killing off Nickel just as much as it won't shy away from killing off George. For example, if you get caught, you get killed.
The tactical advantage of hiding in there escaped me.
But also, if you don't put the broom in the door, the guy opens the door anyway and you get killed. This brings us to saving. I know my saves look lackluster here, but that is because I can play 1 and 2 by memory at this point. But Broken Sword is a game that you should save a lot for, especially the first 2 games. I can't remember if there are any deaths in the other 3, but the deaths in the first 2 are so far and few between that if you get forgetful, you could end up jumping back a long while to redo quite a lot of gameplay. In fact, scrap that. You definitely need to save a lot in 3 because 3 is a buggy mess, but we'll get to that one in its own video. After locking up the guard though, Nickel can spy on Ubia and Karzak. We find out that Karzak was the one that killed Ubia's wife, and George probably owes him an apology at this point. Karzak also supplied Ubia with a ton of drugs because apparently that's what Tezcatlipoca told him to do. He also has this real cool yet cold line.
For the love of God, Karzak!
Which one?
Before shooting poor Ubia and leaving the room. This is also the final confirmation we need that Karzak is basically the brains behind all of this. Ubia was going along with it for whatever reasons, but he is now dead. As I said, we saw what happened to him, unlike Pegram. It is also nice to see that George jumping to conclusions on gossip he's heard about someone he doesn't know is once again proved to be foolish on his behalf. We spend a lot of the game with George spreading the rumor that Ubia killed his wife, mainly because at this point, whilst Karzak was a face of bad things happening, we had the mystery of who Ubia was in the air as well. Ubia was very much more the personal thing for George because he knew we were attacked in Ubia's house. Whilst we know about Karzak, and Nico has told us about Karzak, George hasn't seen him, he doesn't ask questions about him, he has no personal relationship towards that character, so it's kind of obvious why he went with Ubia the entire time. Ubia was a nice faceless evil that we didn't know anything about. That being said, I always found it nice that he wasn't a cold-blooded killer in the end. I don't know, I just like George being wrong, to be fair. Somehow, Karzak doesn't notice Nico watching in on the window, or even notices her as he steps out of the room, but he goes to talk to Pedro, and Nico will automatically walk into the cabin. You need to check if Ubia really is dead, which, yes, he is, before taking the stone and being attacked by Karzak.
We were going to need the stone to thwart Karzak. I knew Ubia would have approved. It was the Jaguar stone, all right.
Again, you can die here, but all you need to do is stab him in the leg with the dagger, and then we're making a run for it. in heels. And that's the end of that for Nico. She's got her stone, so it's just up to George to find his stone. What George has found is pirates, or a film shoot, or kind of both. Nah, just a film shoot. Now, this is one of my favorite parts, just because it's so out there, but also just so Broken Sword and very George. Whilst Nico is fighting off evil people and being badass, we have George here who's just going to annoy more people. He annoyed people back at the Ketch Museum and might have helped Emily suffocate in a box.
Yeah, and so am I. She was my friend. Her aunts hated it, but we did move together, you know. She used to be real keen at hide and seek. It could take hours to find her. One time, the last time, it took days. She must have shouted and screamed herself hoarse, but there was nobody to hear her.
Where'd she hidden herself?
Captain Ketch's old sea chest. The only way to open it was from the outside.
Suddenly, I didn't feel so good. We never exchanged another word about Emily Ketch.
And now he's going to annoy a whole film crew. We're on the set of Carlton Hawkins' latest film, Treasure Island. Or at least Treasure Island of some kind.
What's the name of the movie?
Are you trying to be funny?
No.
It's Treasure Island, the only book I ever read twice.
I don't recall any girls in Treasure Island.
Gotta think box office. People like that kind of thing.
Also, this guy's meant to be a kid. I don't know how young he's meant to be, but he looks like the double of George, so I don't know if he really is a kid. In this area, George will meet a British stuntman, is rude to this lady.
Yeah, and I used it to shoot a poisoned dart at a wild boar. It was a real-life drama, not just a scene from a movie.
Right.
She was having trouble with the whole real life is not a movie concept.
And then the surfer boy, teenager, person. Whilst I admit this movie sounds like it would be awful, and that the scene we do get to see ain't that great, there is something about having to agree with George, who is just being rude for the sake of being rude, that I really don't like. Game, don't give me reason to agree with someone like George. With the scene out of the way, we're ready for the stunt, which means Bert is now in front of this bush here, and this is where our big puzzle is for this section. For some reason, we have to ruin all of this to get to the beach instead of just being allowed to leave. So you give Bert a pancake with syrup on it, then throw the stone-like bun into the bush twice and off he goes. This is another one of those puzzles where people can get stumped based on the fact that they didn't necessarily realize after it didn't work the first time that you just have to do the same thing over again with the bush. It doesn't make it obvious that if you throw the bun a second time that the hornets there are going to get angrier, but that is all you have to do.
Cut and printed! That was brilliant, folks!
For some reason, we're also just on our way with the film crew to where we need to go. Sadly, we can't go towards the pillars because we're getting in the way of the non-filming going on. The film isn't being filmed because the camera is stuck and no one seems happy at all. It is always worth talking to everyone in these games. Bert is hilarious, and it is nice that they put his accent into the subtitles.
Yeah, nice here, innit? My Beryl used to love the seaside. Day out at Clacton. Bloody smashing. A pint of jelly deals washed down with a bottle of brown. Quick feel on a big wheel and a stroll around the town. Course, them days, you could live like a flipping king on 10 bob a night. Tombola, frothy coffee at the cap or the prom.
You know, I don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about.
And when you talk to Haiku, you try to convince him that you're better off than him because you have a piece of coal?
I may not be making millions of dollars, and I may not have thousands of nubile, if uncritical, young women lusting for my body, but I've got something that you haven't. This small piece of coal.
Man, you're getting freaky on me.
It would be interesting to see how people just think of George in the long run. They seem to care about him to a point after spending some time with him, but how is Haiku going to feel in 10 years' time, remembering the weird blonde guy that tried to convince him that having a piece of coal would be better than having ladies go after him? Will Bert become a stunt coordinator because a man who attacked him with hornets told him to? Who knows? Either way, you just have to convince the film director to let you do the stunt. They originally wanted Haiku to go into a cave, but the cave currently is on high tide, so they've instead decided to use the pillar that you want to climb. Honestly, he'll just take your word that you won't sue him if you get hurt, and you need to try to pick up the camera and talk to Flash about it before you can give him the idea to free-film the scene instead of using the stuck camera lift. With both of these things done, you get a cutscene and George himself now gets a stone too.
Ready when you are, Mr. Hawks.
Stone which Ketchum captured from the Spanish. The Eagle Stone.
With all 3 stones nabbed, we're back to the village of the monkey dancing with Nico, just there won't be any monkey dancing anymore as the whole village has been burnt down. George has already been here, we know this by his glasses lying on the floor apparently, and Titipoco, the smaller of the 2 kidnappers, is also here. With his help, Nico will tip a barrel of water over to find the coyote stone in the burning ashes. Titipoco, for some reason, has one of the stones, so now Nico basically has all 3, and with a little help from Titipoco, who has a great name, by the way, we're able to find out the way to the pyramid and basically the last part of the game.
We arrived to find George being led up the stairs. We clearly didn't have much time.
And technically we have 3 heroes now with Titipoco. Though I do love this joke with the gun and Nico and Titipoco, it's very funny.
You little asshole.
It's kind of weird to me that he didn't show George getting caught. Maybe they just didn't have time to make a longer cutscene or something, but either way, you now have to find a way to get to the top of the pyramid without anyone noticing you and distract everyone to save George. Thankfully, we have Titipoco with us, so he can help us with some of the tasks. You have to go off to the side and talk to the soldiers that have been posted there and keep people away. Telling them that you're the general's girlfriend, Karzak's underling, or the president's niece will have them leave you alone. You can't go wrong because this guy is an idiot and pretty women seem to be beyond him. That's because if we're gonna make a distraction, we need to make a distraction. Did that make sense? I wrote it, so it should make sense. Titipoco needs to fix the elevator by dropping down the rope. Nico needs to basically destroy this engine, fill up the engine of the elevator, and go up. You can't do anything but look at Real being pathetic, as he is, Pedro just being Pedro, and George doing his best to get shot.
The maniacs were going to sacrifice George.
Shut up, Stobbart. Just shut up.
Calm down. He's no threat.
Hey, Raoul, why don't you do us both a favor and shoot Pablo?
You're very funny, Stobbart. I haven't forgotten Marseille. When Karzak cuts your heart out, I'll be the one laughing.
I'll bet I'm not the only one due for the chop around here either. Hey, Raoul?
I'm warning you.
Raoul was a bundle of raw nerves. I hoped George wouldn't push him too far.
Grab these bullets here, and yeah, you can guess the rest. With Pedro gone, Nico comes to save George. But with Graciento now at gunpoint thanks to Titipoco, we can save George and go into the final part of the plan. We'll stop Karzak. Even Titipoco is with us. Unlike Broken Sword 1, Broken Sword 2 ends with a gauntlet of puzzles. Nico gives George one of the stones, meaning all 3 of our heroes now have a stone, and we're still Nico at this present moment. We need to hurry and get through the pyramid before Pedro, Karzak, and the president catch up with us, but we're at a dead end. As we struggle, Titipoco will bother George, which I think is sweet, but the basic puzzle of this room is to pull both these levers and be chucked into a giant hole. We get a cutscene outside showing the world getting darker and Graciento getting a backbone, and this is why I enjoyed Nico talking to him. Is he a good guy? No, probably not. In fact, definitely not. He was a Nepo baby under a dictator mother. That being said, we've seen enough times that he also struggled to live up to his mother's expectations, and she wasn't exactly a loving mother either. Does that make him a better person? Again, no. That being said, the first person that was being dictated at by a dictator was Graciento himself. We also have to remember, just because George saves the world doesn't mean George is always a good person either. Broken Sword loves to show you that people are people, and whilst Graciento isn't a good person, and he isn't going to suddenly be a hero, it's much like Rosso in the first game. He decides basically to buy Nico some time. It was a nice way for Nico to disarm a dangerous situation, was being able to talk sense into someone who has never probably had another person other than his mother ever bother talking to him at all. I know people laugh at the friends we made along the way trope, but sometimes it's just true that people like Graciento are as bad as they are because no one will talk up to him, no one will tell him he's wrong, no one will be friendly to him. People just see him as his mother's son, and then he gets, you know, complacent and a bit of an asshole. It reminds me of Helmeppo in One Piece. If you don't know Helmeppo in One Piece, he has a beautiful story. And it's all about his abusive dad being an asshole, and then him taking that out on everyone else, and then him being garped. Because being garped is a whole thing in One Piece. Nico's pyramid puzzle is a funny one. You have these big wheels and these slabs on the side. You basically have to create the pictures on the far right with the wheels and pictures in the middle. It is a fun puzzle, but it was also the puzzle that somehow broke when I was a kid. My disc, I guess, just wouldn't let me past this bit, which was a shame. That being said, there is another way, a better way, the second of the 2 Easter eggs I know. If you find a certain pixel up here hidden away, then Nico will do a little wiggle. We're in, lads, ancient Aztec Gooners. Either way, I like this puzzle and I like this room. This is the last puzzle for Nico though, who I was happy to get a chance to explore with. Whilst the game itself didn't feel as grand of an adventure as the first game did, being able to see it through the eyes of 2 people was a nice change. Back to George, and poor Titipoco over here looks like he's seen some shit. Obviously, coming from around this area, he's aware this is meant to be Tezcatlipoca's pyramid. I don't know if Tezcatlipoca actually had a pyramid, but that is where we're meant to be. That being said, Titipoco might not be happier in a second after lighting George's torch and finding himself being sent flying backwards after George just pulled the first lever that he saw.
Nothing's happened. Oh, I hate that. Don't you hate that? Titipoco? Oh my...
Now, George's puzzle isn't necessarily more hands-on than Nico's, but with it being in multiple rooms, I've always kind of disliked this puzzle more than I did Nico's. Also, I guess if you know the Easter egg, you don't even need to do Nico's puzzle, which makes it even less annoying. Pull the lever in your room, pull the one closest to the door you walk through, then in the corridor, pull the lever closest to the camera, and you are done. A secret door opens and you pick up the torch to leave. It is a beautiful area to look at though, if you want to sit around and look at it, and you might have to because there's a lot of lever pushing, a lot of walking around. It's pretty though. This area basically is just you walking down some stairs and pressing things. When you get to the bottom, we'll go into a cutscene. George will automatically walk into the central chamber, stone in hand. Nico is also there, Titipoco shows up, and whilst Nico easily manages to insert her stone, Titipoco is too small because why else have a small guy helping? The president tries to stop him, but they fight and her son comes, picking Titipoco, and leaving his mum to die whilst George struggles himself as well. It is a pretty cool cutscene to end the game, as Tezcatlipoca is reborn out of the mirror. You see someone outside being hit with the blast and disintegrating, and with George finally getting the stone in his slot, we shoot Tezcatlipoca back into the mirror with this, and that's it. The end. Let's face it, Broken Sword isn't known for great endings, and there's no difference here. It happens so fast and feels a little bit of an anticlimactic ending, but it is what it is. You have completed Broken Sword 2 and get this really weird credit song that doesn't fit the game at all. So how was the game compared to the first? For me, both the shorter time frame to make the game as well as the lower budget is felt throughout the game. I don't know if the people who made the game would agree with that, but personally for me, you can feel it. On a mechanical level, Broken Sword 2 is much the same as the first. It moved the inventory to the bottom of the screen, as I've said before, instead giving the top of the screen over to the options, which weren't the prettiest to look at. Gone was the nice options menu from the first, and hovering over any of these options never told you what they actually did either. The inventory itself works more or less like the first game, and even the cursor for this game works the same. It is reactionary, so changes depending on what you can do, and still has the lovely hand gestures when you can move screens around. Because the inventory has been moved, talking to people has now changed as well. Whilst it is still the same principle, and you're still asking about subjects rather than getting to see what George and Nickel will actually say, you no longer can ask about everything in the inventory. This was probably done both because the inventory had moved, but also because it was possibly less work to write out interactions for every single thing George could possibly stick in his pockets. Whilst things did work the same, I felt it was a huge downgrade from the first game regardless, not in enjoyability, but in the feel of it all. Puzzles felt less well thought out, whilst in the first game it was like taking part in a film, in this one it returned a little more to a bog-standard point and click. Moon logic never really entered the picture, but it still felt like the first step from the Da Vinci Code to full-out national treasure that the third game becomes. It wasn't so much about stumbling on ancient puzzles and having to solve things in a human way, and more about let us put this in your way and see how a bunch of random items will help you, and that is fine. Overall, Broken Sword 2 played well. As a kid, I never had a problem with the goat puzzle, and I'm aware that one of the problems with it is the fact that it introduced a mechanic that hadn't been in the game and doesn't show up in the game again afterwards, that being that George can actually run. In Broken Sword 2, there aren't any puzzles like that, but maybe there is a feeling of being a bit more pixel hunty, which means you can get stuck on puzzles much longer. The bush under the priest's house for a start, it doesn't have a sign of being interactable, and you'll get it in the end because it is animated, but it doesn't stand out as much as you'd think it would. Same for the hornets of the film set. As I said, if you throw one button in there, you might not think anything of it. It will probably take until you get bored and do it a second time for it to just work. That isn't to say they didn't try to push you into doing it a second time, with George saying,
"Those hornets were not pleased."
But I can easily see these puzzles being just as tricky as the goat puzzle before them. What was the real downgrade though was the story, in my opinion. In Shadows of the Templar, you really did feel like you were chasing after shadows, learning slowly about the Templars and making connections of various kinds with the people around you. Conversations meant more, puzzles felt like they had more weight, and it felt like you were really living in this world. It helped that you were able to go back and visit certain places and talk to characters randomly. The world felt so huge. Smoking Mirror isn't a bad story, it just feels like it didn't have time to develop into an epic like the original did. Whilst it was nice to catch up with older characters, there were no real standout new characters. Why it was nice to see the characters return was that you had a bond with them through the first game. You don't have any reason to have a bond with a single person in Smoking Mirror, which again isn't a bad thing, but it is a downgrade on how personal the first one was. There is no moment like how you get so caught up in the story of missing children in Spain, where this feels like it's getting personal, even if neither you as a human playing a game or George as a character in the game has any stakes in this story. Did it need to be an epic like the first though? No, it didn't. You can both be disappointed and still love it for what it did give. Whilst the characters won't stay with me forever like Dwayne and Pearl do, there are still some great characters to meet. I loved Aunt Sponge and Spiker, for example, and the scenes with the filmmaker always sticks with me. George and Nico and their dynamics stay pretty much the same, so you still get plenty of moments where you want to smack George over the head, but they are far and few between compared to the first. Everywhere you go looks majestic. The artwork on this game was up to par with the first, and whilst you didn't get as many interesting and different places to explore, they still stood out well enough on their own. Plus the sound design was better. So often in the first game, it felt like every other line was recorded in a different room with a different microphone, with someone nowhere near the microphone, but overall the quality of the recording was so much better in this one. The actual voice acting was still a 10 out of 10. You can't engage with the world as much as you did in the first, but the world is still engaging nonetheless. Nothing about it improved on the first game, but it didn't fall too far below the first game either. It was a shorter and more precise journey, building on a strong foundation laid down by the original game, and it was obviously created with love and respect for the first game and the story that came before it. Much like the first, it was a commercial success, once again on the PlayStation as well. And we did get a Broken Sword 3, even if it took 6 years to get there. Heck, at this point, it has been 10 years between 5 and the still-to-be-released 6th game, Parsifal Stone, which was announced at the same time as Reforged 1, and has never been heard of again. For me, Broken Sword 2 is probably my 3rd favorite of the series so far. It had its moments, it had some great puzzles, and it made me laugh. It still looks great, it had cool new outfits for George and Nico, it had Titipoco and his little gun. We got Pearl and Dwayne back, which is always a positive, and it was brave to move completely away from the subject of the first game and go for something completely different with the Mesoamerican religious stuff. It missed having a kick-ass map, but that's just streamlined your experience anyway. Guys, I just like maps. That's why I go on about maps all the time. If you've ever watched anything on my main channel, I talk about travel screens and maps all the time. That being said, this was also the game that led to the decline of the series, kinda. But that is for another day, when I can sit down and talk about Broken Sword 3, so we can get to the real low point of Broken Sword, which is Broken Sword 4. Yeah, spoilers, I don't like Broken Sword 4. That is all I have to say today about this game. I don't know, I'm ad-libbing, I'm not reading a script anymore. Huzzah, it's awful. So, 2025 has been a long year, and this video probably won't see the light of day until 2026. It will also be the first Broken Sword video I have out properly on the newer channel, which means I did re-upload the first Broken Sword last night to this channel, and delisted it on the main channel. Give it some love if you want. If you haven't seen it, it'll be brand new for you. If you have seen it, put it on in the background on your second monitor. It needs a couple of views on it, but I'm not too worried about it. This year isn't about numbers, it's just about being happy, maybe. Again, on this channel, I plan on making longer form content. I have a rough idea of where I'd like this channel to go over the next year, but it does take a lot of time and energy to do all this, both of which I don't have much of because of my disability. I want to finish off the Broken Sword series, I want to start up the Danganronpa series afterwards, and in between I'd like to take a look at standalone games, or even just other games like Harvester, Lost Eden, which is also another re-upload from my main channel, so again, any views on that video will be really helpful, and Tombo, which was gonna be my Christmas video. I don't know if it is my Christmas video. As of recording this, I'm halfway through making that video at the beginning of December, so it should come out sometime around Christmas. That being said, if you'd like to support me as I do all of the things I want to do this year, then you'll find all of the links to my social media, my Twitch where I stream all the time, and I'm doing a partner push this year as well, so if you'd like to give me any kind of support over there, I'd appreciate it. We're doing a retro bucket list series where I go through games that I didn't play as a kid because I only had Sega consoles, so it's mainly Nintendo games. But there's some Sega games on there and PlayStation games that I did play but never finished. We're also going to be trying Dark Souls games this year because I watched Mr. Steve start it and he was doing really well. I've played Dark Souls before, I've just not got very far, and it's to shut up Dogma. And I will be doing Elden Ring sometime this year with Dogma. To shut him up. Because boy oh boy do I need to shut him up about Bloodborne and my attempt at Far of the G and my failure. We're doing Dark Souls and I'm gonna get good, guys. We're gonna get good. So go follow me over on Twitch. There's also links to my Patreon, which I've not done anything with, and therefore no one's even looked at it yet. But it's all down there if you want to support me. I feel like I can say this at the end of a retrospective because it's a very long video, so I can ramble on a little at the end. No one will probably see it, but I can ramble, so I'm gonna ramble. Currently, content creation is all I have. I am disabled, and it is all I really have left in this world to do. All the support I get is appreciated, and I kind of have to focus hard this year on making it something that can support me if mental health gets delisted as a disability here in the UK, which is a fear for many people with life-changing mental health disabilities right now. On my main channel, I've talked about it a few times with videos on my fight with agoraphobia, which has left me incapable of leaving the house or talking to people in nearly 5 years now, So even if your support is to tell me what you don't like about these videos so I can improve on them, I will be grateful, because people don't tend to tell you what you do wrong in these videos, so I don't always know how to make them better, but I want to, by the end of 2026, have videos that I can be proud of, that bring people in, that enjoy the content I make. That all being said though, thank you so much as always for watching these videos, especially if you are here till the end of it, which probably will just be watered. I will hopefully have Broken Sword 3 out sooner than you'd think, seeing it took over a year to get 2 out, but I'll also hopefully have some treats along the way. So, till next time, take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.
Drop the gun or I shoot!
Please, don't hurt me!
Don't worry yourself, my finger isn't loaded.